Welcome to Prunership Diaries. Today we have with us David Belo, who is a bartender, baker, chocolate maker, and founder of Naviluna Artisan Chocolates. And I'm so excited to talk to him. And I'm sure we're going to have a very sweet conversation. So, David, welcome to my show. It is such an honor to have you here today.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Lovely. David, I'll get right into it. So before we start talking about Naviluna, which is your venture, I would like to know, could you tell us a bit about what you did before, you had the thought that, you know what, let me start a venture. So what were you doing before that?
Okay, so as you mentioned in the intro, I'm a cocktail bartender by trade, rarely. I was mixing drinks and working in the industry primarily in the UK for
Mm-hmm.
11 years.
Wow.
And that was that. And then sort of wanted to expand my knowledge and migrate a bit. So moved into bread baking and pastry. But that was a relatively short stint. And then,
Right.
yeah, just kind of, did some consulting, traveled around a little bit, and then realized that, went back to the UK, but realized that it was time to really move on and ended up in India with
Oh,
the idea of, settling here for a while and seeing, what projects could be incubated. And then by chance discovered that there was cocoa. Didn't know that there was cocoa in Asia at that time.
right.
Just saw that the market was growing, it was changing, it was getting a little bit more savvy, and that there was no
Mm-hmm.
great chocolate. So I just kind of put those three things together, and then thought that yeah, actually it was time that India and the world got a great Indian artisan chocolate company.
Oh wow. Wow. Amazing. Well, it's quite interesting that you tried a variety of things, bartending, then baking. And I would like to know where and when did you learn the art of chocolate making? Was it while you were in the UK, or I mean, did you try it out right then and there, or was it like once you came to India and then you wanted to get right into chocolate making alone? So how did that happen?
Yeah, that's right. So I was messing around with chocolate confectionery in the UK, but it wasn't like proper chocolate. It wasn't bean to bar. It was only really when I got to India. And yeah, it was just curiosity, a lot of research online. To be honest, I would say that
Mm-hmm.
YouTube has been my greatest teacher. So pretty
Wow.
much self-taught when it came to chocolate, and then obviously now through the years it's just experience. But the thing that I sort of had as an asset was that I was already very much an accomplished bartender and a reasonably accomplished baker. So my knowledge of
Right.
food, drink, and flavor was already at a sort of advanced stage. So it was more about applying what I knew to chocolate and then understanding chocolate by itself, but then applying a sort of a broader sense of food and drink to chocolate. But yeah, I mean, chocolate specifically, it's all already been self-taught.
All right, amazing. That's brilliant. So my next question is, I mean, you decided to come to India because you wanted to explore, and then you dabbled in, chocolate making. You were learning it. I want to know why. Why did you, first and foremost, why did you want to start a venture in Mysore, which is where you're currently at?
Mm. Mm.
Any specific reason? And more so, I mean, you said you came to India to explore, and of course you thought, okay, you had a market for chocolates, but more so I want to really know why you're in India, because
Mm.
you've had major, I think majority of the experience. You said 11 years in the UK, and you dabbled in a whole lot of things, so I'm very
Yeah.
curious to know why Mysore.
I mean, okay, so let's backtrack. So why India and why Mysore?
Yes.
I was in London for most of those 11 years,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and great city. But I've always said that London is like a university, and I think once you've gotten your degree, it's time to check out. I mean, most of my friends have left London now. My generation, a few have remained, but obviously, cost of living there is it's really
Right.
it's exorbitant, and I mean, not too dissimilar to Mumbai in that you really have to be quite accomplished and you have to be earning really, really well to enjoy a sort of moderate standard of living. And with all of that, it means that as a creative person, you can't take too much risk. Now,
Mm.
Jordan Peterson talks about types of characters, whether you're a fan of his or not. is a separate issue. But he often says that people who are high in openness are the artists and the entrepreneurs. And in fact, entrepreneurs and artists are the same people. They're wired. They are people who are wired the same way.
Yes.
And I always felt that like London was such a sort of invigorating city creatively, and at the same time stifling because it is just so
Yeah.
expensive, and you cannot. I was working easily 12 to 18 hours a day for years.
Right.
So to be able to be an entrepreneur, and an entrepreneur who is taking risk and sort of being creatively led rather than financially led, which is the kind of entrepreneur that I am. I'm not someone who's gotten an MBA and looking at SAMs and TAMs and just trying to pitch and get to Y Combinator. I'm not interested in that. Like, for me, what's important is creating art, and then building a business around that supports the art. So, coming from that perspective, you need a place where there's a low cost of living, and that you can afford to take risk. So, that plus just sort of big city burnout from London,
Mm.
Mysore was really the answer when I got here. But, stepping back from that, like, why Mysore, why India rather, coming from South Africa, from a Commonwealth country, I think one looks for commonality and
Right.
uniqueness, when looking for a new space. So, I mean, India and South
Mm.
Africa obviously share a lot of history. We share a lot of culture. We have the biggest Indian city outside of India. So there's a lot that's familiar, but at the same time, it's also different. And, as an entrepreneur, one of the things I always look for is English common law, because I studied commercial law in the UK. It's a familiar system. I can read the language. And that's done me really
Mm.
well, rather than going to somewhere, say, in continental Europe, where one doesn't understand the language at all. So, I mean, these are the advantages that India has, and that has allowed someone like myself to come here and set up. So, yeah, that's the sort of the crux of it.
Wow, that's amazing. But David, I want to know. I mean, coming from a different country altogether, and setting up base here in a different country altogether. What was running through your mind at that point in time?
Just when I got started, I was really clear that I wanted to be a producer, working as a bartender. When I made the
Mm.
shift from bartender to baker, I was starting to get into being a producer. I was always really just fascinated by these great stories of rum makers
Oh,
and and wine makers and, all of that. And I love craftsmanship, So,
right.
yeah, I definitely wanted to get out of hospitality and into production. I never really saw
Mm.
myself as a manufacturer or FMCG, but production for me was always sexy. And then that's why when I discovered chocolate, I was like, okay, cool. I can bring my skills for flavor, but then I can also sort of explore this realm of, being a producer. So that was that part. Um, but then, it wasn't really like India. It wasn't like, okay, I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to do it in India. It was just like, okay, I want to do this thing. And India just seems like an adventure. So one thing I didn't mention was that, but during my time in the UK, I was in Egypt. I was setting up a club there
Okay.
for a hotel chain, and the revolution
Mm-hmm.
happened. And funny
Right.
enough, I was actually dealing with some of the politicians just before the
Mm.
revolution.
Oh,
But
all right.
I mean, not directly, but they used to frequent our venues. So,
Mm.
like, I fell in love with Egypt, and but the political situation, whatever, like, it didn't look like a good idea at the time. So, India just seemed to have that sense of like old world charm character. I'd never been sort of too interested in places like Dubai, which are like brand new and glass and shiny, and that's not my thing. I like places with history, and India just has so much, And I think when you're building a brand, like, people talk a lot today about the story, and I think when you're building a brand, you need to have rich context. And India has, and Mysore certainly has. It has a great history, an international history, in fact. So yeah, these are great tools
Right.
and material to work with building a brand.
Wow, amazing. All right. Well, I'm curious to know about the name Naviluna, which is the name of your venture. Um,
Mhm.
so I want to know the story behind the name, and also could you tell us more about your venture as to what you do and what is it all about?
Okay, sure. So we're bean to bar chocolate makers. As far as I know, when we started in 2012, no one was making bean to bar in India at that time, and no one was
Mm.
making bean to bar chocolate only using Indian organic cocoa. So that's the kind of thing that we were doing. And,
Ah,
kind of coming from the wine world, in wine, we talk about New World and Old World, the New World being South Africa, Chile, New Zealand, Argentina, etc., and the Old World being Europe. And I could see that there was like a New World, Old World coming in cacao because, traditionally most of the world's cocoa comes from Ghana and Ivory Coast in West Africa. And then Latin America is the genetic home of cacao. But cocoa has been grown in India since 1798, Sri Lanka even earlier, Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia. So we started seeing like brands like Maru coming up in Vietnam in 2005, making Vietnamese single origin cocoa. So like this new world of cacao origin started to come up, and just like wine, the terroir, the soil, the environment really plays a big part in the flavor profile, and you can't replicate that elsewhere. So Indian cacao will always be unique; it'll always have its own flavor profile, generally speaking. So
right.
I sort of saw all of that, and that was kind of the mission statement for Naviluna, to make a world class chocolate product with finesse, but that was very very much Indian in origin, and they really showcased the terroir because I felt that like India has such richness in terms of raw materials, but this is pre-make in India. We're going back 10 years almost, yeah, almost 10 years. You know, the finesse was lacking in a lot of products, and that's really changed now. I'm really happy to say. But at that time, there were very few boutique brands, artisan brands who were less mass and more class. Now that's
Ah,
really changed, which
yes.
is fantastic. But that was our
Right.
focus at the time. So yeah, that's what it was. And then in terms of the name, Navilu obviously means peacock in Kannada,
Ah,
which has always been our logo. The Na is short for Inda, or of the peacock, which is just
okay.
a metaphor for of India, the peacock being the national bird. So yeah, that's the
Ah,
meaning behind the name.
beautiful, beautiful. Amazing. It's so very interesting to see that someone from outside India and setting up an venture out here and just going with the coming up with a name in Canada, which is the Mysore being the city in Karnataka, which is a Kannada speaking state. So beautiful. I mean, oh wow. I mean, that's really inspiring and motivating, and it's so beautiful with the thought process, the idea behind it.
Thank you.
um so David, I mean, you were talking about cocoa and cacao. So before we get on to that, I just want to, I think probably for the listener's sake as well, could you tell us the difference between cocoa and cacao? I know there is something to do with the roasting. I think, yeah,
No,
one of
no,
it. Oh,
nonsense. All
oh,
lies.
okay,
It's all
okay.
lies. It's all lies. It's just semantics. Yeah. So
Okay.
cocoa is just the anglicization of the word cacao, which is the
Okay.
Spanish term. So any
Right.
Spanish speaker will say cacao, but in the English speaking world, we say cocoa. That's it.
That
They
is
just
it.
moved
No, no
An
other
O and an A
difference.
around. There is a connotation. People seem to think today that cocoa is to do with Dutch or industrially processed chocolate. It's not. It's just that
Right.
the anglicization of the word and
Mhm.
industrialization happened at the same time. So hence the
Wow.
confusion. But it's the same thing. It's just semantics. Yeah. Happy to clear out
Okay,
that
got
one.
it. Thank you. Yes, we're talking to the experts. So yes. Right. So let me get into the details of the chocolate making process. So could you tell us a bit about it? And also with respect to where do you exactly source your beans? I mean, the cocoa beans or the cacao, and yeah,
Mm,
the beans
mm.
especially. If you could
Yeah,
let it
sure,
out.
sure. This is a really, really important part of what we do. So, I
Right.
mean, there's no good chocolate without good cacao. The same way there's no great wine
Yes.
without great grapes. So yeah, we source from all four southern states. So Karnataka, Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, and Tamil Nadu. To varying degrees, we've worked with many different growers and post-harvest
Mhm.
processes through the years. Mainly, we source from Kerala. I must say, it's definitely one of the better regions. Karnataka also has good cacao,
Mm.
but intercropping and biodiversity, have a big impact. So just to explain a little bit further, cacao really like most foods, will pick up what's in its environment. So in North Karnataka, Dakshin Kannada district, for example, there's a lot of
Mm.
areca nut being grown. Now, areca nut is very astringent and bitter.
Wow.
So the compounds, the organic compounds from the decomposition of old areca nut trees will end up in the soil, and then those compounds will then be inherited and absorbed by the root structure of the cacao tree, and it will
Mm.
impact and influence the flavor. So we find that cacao from North Karnataka tends to really reveal the sort of the areca nut in the area, whereas Kerala and Tamil Nadu tend to have more intercropping with coconut, and Andhra Pradesh tends to intercrop more with oil palm. So this
Mm.
also reflects the strategy that various states have played in terms of their agroeconomics. So these are one of the factors. The other factor is skill. The guys that we work with in Kerala, in fact, are specialists at cocoa fermentation and post-harvest processing. Whereas some smallholder farmers, they tend to do the post-harvest processing themselves, but they're not necessarily that clued up. They don't really have the appetite for having a very scientific method and approach, Whereas let's go back to wine. I use the example a lot because it's just, it's a much bigger, more established industry. And also chocolate being a confection for a long time, when you're adding a lot of sugar and milk, you don't have to do all of these things because it doesn't show. Whereas
Mm.
craft chocolate, specialty chocolate, we're making something which is refined, it's for grown-ups, and we're trying, to keep the sugar levels very low and not have too many additives. Therefore, everything that happens from bean to bar and also before that, at the farm stage, has to be spot on to make a great product. So yeah, we source from more states, but we get different grades from different areas. If we're looking for something, we'll get it from one area or from another area. So I mean, these are some of the things that we have to look out for.
Wow. All right. And with respect to the process, is it like you do it in-house? I mean, they're in Mysore, and what is
Yes.
the time period as well? Like, for making the chocolates and yeah,
Mm.
could you tell us more about that?
Sure, sure. So there's the stages that are involved with making chocolate. Obviously, there's the harvesting of the fruit. The
Mm.
pods get opened up, the seeds come out, and then the seeds will get fermented for anything between 5 to 7 days.
Ah, okay.
And fermentation is really important. In fact,
Mm.
50% of the final flavor comes down to the fermentation.
Oh.
After fermentation, we get to drying, which is sort of an ancillary step, but it's actually quite important. And then once
Mm.
drying is done, then beans are sent over to us at the factory. I say factory, we have a small production unit. It's very boutique. But yeah, then what we do, we've got dried beans. We crack them. We winnow the husk off from the nib. Then
Mm.
they get ground, refined to get nice, silky, smooth texture. Then conching, which is a process of flavor development. You're releasing acids, you're breaking down tannins, you're oxidizing. And then we get to tempering, which is that thing that you always see guys doing or girls doing on the marble slab or in machines, depending on the setup that someone has. And that gives chocolate its lovely snap and shine. And then gets molded up, or seasoned rather, and molded up and put into the fridge. All in all, from tree to bar, it's
Yeah.
about 3 weeks. From bean to
Oh,
bar, we're looking at
wow.
about 10 days. Yeah, about
Oh,
10
all
days.
right.
So it takes a
Wow.
long time. And that's our style. We can speed it up a lot more. And that's something I'd like to discuss with the viewer, or to share with the viewers, is that when it comes to industrial chocolate, there are steps like
Mm.
Dutching and adding alkaline solutions, which can take a process that we do, i.e., conching, from 72 hours minimum down to 8 hours. But when you do that, you're
Oh,
losing a lot of the subtle, nuanced, fruity notes. You can forget
wow.
about terroir. You're never going to know, one origin from another. You get very homogenized, commodified product.
Mm.
And of course,
Mm.
the reason why industrial chocolate's so cheap is not only because of all the sugar in the milk, but because they're cutting a lot of corners. They're using a lot of tricks to save time, and time is money.
Oh,
So that's some of the differences. When we talk about what we do, and people are like, "Well, why is it pricey or whatever?" The
mm.
reality is, okay, also economy of scale, but also we do the long, slow, expensive way.
Right. Right. I mean, amazing to get to know about the process, and my mouth is surely watering when you said that. Okay, the shiny chocolate is out.
Yeah.
Oh wow! Oh, lovely. Right. So David, could you tell us, like you started in 2012, almost 10 years ago. So
Yeah.
I want to know, how did you get started? Because I know you have your products out in various locations here in India, and of course abroad as well.
Yeah.
I want to know, how did you start putting your brand out there with respect to, of course, marketing? Was it initially through probably word of mouth, like you had your network of people around, and that's how you started off? And also, do you use social media to, to market your brand? Yeah, I want to hear it
Okay.
all.
When we started, we did 2 years of R&D from 2012 to 2014, just in Mysore. We were really lucky because there's a very dynamic yoga community. We get about 2,000 yoga students from around the world,
Oh,
um,
wow.
and pretty much concentrated in two suburbs of Mysore. So really great pool to start doing your testing. And it was really just small,
Right.
3 kilos a week out of our kitchen
Hmm.
at home. And that was the first 2 years, and just refining the product, figuring out the process, learning, studying, observing, refining, and repeat. Once we did
Right.
that, we launched in Bangalore in 2014. That was the first time we launched outside of
Mm-hmm.
Mysore. And
Right.
the first thing I did, coming from a drinks background, I used to work with Bacardi and Diageo and Preneur on a sort of part-time basis, doing trainings and tastings and stuff for them, and Harrods and Selfridges and all these department stores in London. So the first thing I did was take the product to the market and start doing chocolate events, chocolate tastings. We were on Facebook, but really the way that
Wow.
we launched the product was a very old-fashioned grassroots approach, by just getting out there, getting into any farmers markets, craft fairs, design markets, doing collaborations. We did chocolate infused dinners at the Oberoi in Bangalore. We did an 11
Mm.
course dinner with chocolate in every single course, from sweet to savory. Just to show people that
Oh,
chocolate is not just, because one of the things we've had to do is break down and challenge the status quo of chocolate from the industrial
right.
area, which is for kids and very sweet. Whereas in Europe, there's a history of chocolate that goes back to the 1600s. It was being enjoyed in the courts. It was considered, amongst many things, an aphrodisiac, a pick me up, something that was good as a stimulant like coffee, etc. So, and chocolate wasn't always necessarily served sweet in Europe, and
Mm.
certainly not in Central America.
Right.
So, a lot of what we did was, showcase the product, tell our story, but then also show people chocolate in a very different light. And we knew that, we had to really kind of change perception, quite strongly and quite quickly, for people to understand what the product was, understand the pricing, and understand, sort of this long, 10 to 15 day process that we go through versus, say industrial chocolate. So that was really important. And it was literally up until, COVID, to 2019, from 2014 to 2019, just farmers markets across the country. So we started in Bangalore, being close by, and then, just started moving across.
Right.
I was literally, for 2 years, almost in another city every second weekend, for 2 years straight,
Ah,
just doing markets and
wow.
events. And crazy. And then obviously social media is like, if you look at your sales funnel, the farmers markets and the craft markets, this face to face,
Right.
word of mouth is at the top of the sales funnel. But then, from there you move to social media, where you've already made a connection with people, and then you can, furnish further information, or, share your creatives, or, content or whatever. And that was really important. And I think because we've done that, we've had a very sticky, very loyal customer base. We had a lot of traction, and in fact, I think
Right.
that has helped us, build, second degree and third degree, circles of customers, because people have had a direct experience with us, and then they're sharing that direct experience with their friends, and their colleagues and their peers. So, I really think that the old-fashioned grassroots approach to marketing and launching a
Right.
brand really is still relevant in
Yes.
today's day and age. And I think it's a bit of a forgotten art. I see a lot of
Yes.
young, especially those which are funded companies, coming out and just spending big bucks on marketing, but so many of them are here today and gone tomorrow, because just everybody wants to be in that space. And I think you have to
Right.
to get noticed outside the noise. You have to do things differently. And sometimes a slow
Right.
food approach to marketing is actually, better than, being loud, and getting on billboards or spending too much money on YouTube ads.
Absolutely. I mean, I totally resonate with you. I think doing the research and finding your target audience, and of course going through various other places and figuring out what the market is wanting, what is the customer wanting. I think it's very needed for any venture to start off. And as you rightly said, of course, there are a whole lot of people who just get on social media and just do paid marketing, but of course at the end of the day they're not getting the right audience. Totally resonate with what you said, and it's so amazing, that you travel to almost all the cities in across India and trying to figure out how the market is and putting your brand out there. It's really wonderful. David, talking about chocolate, I mean, so what are the varieties of chocolates that you offer? I mean, the varieties, the flavors, and how does it work? Is it like seasonal, like of course with respect to the ingredients that you use, the fruits or the other things? So is it like seasonal flavors, or how does it? So I just want to know more about it.
Sure. So, I mean, one of the things that we've always looked to do is to
Hmm.
showcase, like I said, the terroir of South Indian cacao. That's
Right.
really core. The
Yes.
seasoned bars, which we call inclusion bars,
Mm-hmm.
we only use indigenous, local, or indigenous or local ingredients. That's really, really
Right.
important to us. I
Mm-hmm.
don't see the point in doing vanilla, hazelnut, or strawberry. It's been done. Let the Italians and the French continue. Um, if I'm going to be
Okay.
making confectionery in India, like I want to be using jackfruit and jamun and things like
Wow.
pipili and long and pepper. So these are things that we work with. And
Right.
even for me, like to be interested, I've been in food and drink now almost, well, it's been
Yeah.
19 years. So, I also need to be curious and interested and engaged. And I'm not going to do that, doing the same old stuff. So for me,
Right.
like Naviluna is as much my own personal exploration into ingredients. So, we've done stuff like
Right.
jackfruit and black pepper, which was actually a really big hit
Mhm.
with friends and colleagues in the UK. Mango, chili and capsicum. At the moment, we've got a gondaraj, orange, and long and pepper. So you start to get a sense, Navidin is very, very much a local brand, in terms of the recipes. The
Right.
execution is international, but the ingredients are very much local. So yeah,
Mm.
that's kind of like my process. But just going back to it, the end goal is to get people to the single origins. That's really the destination for us. We use all the inclusions and
Right.
the seasoning just to kind of get people on the dark chocolate train, get them to really just enjoy
Right.
craft chocolate, and then eventually, hopefully, they get there. So I mean, our Kerala single origin. Has been a favorite. I mean, we've got a couple of awards in the UK and at International Chocolate Awards for it a few years ago. But more than that, like it's a bar that people seem to be coming back to year after year after year. And that's the nice thing about being in business almost a decade, is that you really see what
Right.
sticks. And it seems like the movement is working. A lot of people are really getting into craft chocolate and really enjoying the single origins. So that's great.
Wow. Amazing. So David, the chocolates, I mean, of course, you do source it to your customers like across India and of course abroad. And for anyone who just wants to, order for a chocolate, so can they do it online? I mean, is there an option for that?
Yes, naviluna.in.
Okay.
You can order online. You can
All
find
right.
us at any of the food halls across the country. Future Group Food Hall. If you're in Bangalore, Go Native, or any of the Go Native
Yeah.
stores. And
Yeah.
soon we'll be having a store in Mysore. It's taken a bit
Oh,
longer than expected
wow.
due to the lockdowns. But yeah, that we'll have like an experience center and retail outlet in Mysore in a couple of months. So yeah, that's it for now.
Amazing. Right.
Yeah, but yeah, food hall online, and then on our website, there's also a stockers page where we stock, to small independent stores across the country.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Amazing. All right. Lovely. I want to know, I mean, any future plans, I mean, with respect to the products that you're offering and in terms of, expanding, like, I mean, of course you said you have a store coming up in Mysore. So I just
Yes.
want to know, are there any more future plans?
Yeah. Oh Jesus, so many plans.
Okay.
I hope we can keep up with them. That's a bigger problem. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, more stores, more stores.
Mhm.
I won't say where and what for now, but
Right.
After Mysore, we have two more stores planned. Hopefully, that can go to plan pretty quickly.
Mm,
Um, we'll get a little bit more into the hospitality space. So
right.
small cafe offerings within the stores, but the stores will still be
Mm,
primarily retail. And then once we have the stores, we can get into things like bonbons and praline and all your, filled chocolates. We tried that when we first started, but the reality of shipping chocolate, which has a melting
mm.
point of 29 Celsius in
Ah.
India in the summer, is a nightmare
Oh,
across
yeah.
the country, especially when you're looking at 2 to 3 day logistics from Mysore.
Mm,
So that's something I look forward to doing, a lot more of that. And then we can bring that out for weddings and for corporate gifting, etc. But the big thing is really just having experience centers. I really believe in customers getting a tactile experience. And one of the nice things about India is that the market and consumers really respond well to experiences. You can look at
yes.
Decathlon. I mean, Decathlon is not just a retail; it's an outing on a weekend, and they've really
Right.
succeeded because of that model. Or the food hall in Bandra in Mumbai. It's also very experiential. So this is definitely where the market's
Mm,
going. And then what I find is that once people have gone to your store, then they come online for the repeat ordering.
ah.
But stores are where, and brick and mortar is where you build trust and where people really get into the brand. So that's definitely the
Mm.
next step. And then a store in London. We'll launch in the UK through third party in a couple of months, David says.
Oh, wow.
It's a lot of things have been delayed the
I
last year,
know.
but yeah, eventually we'll get into the UK finally, and then yeah, a lot more plans. We want to work closer with the farmers as well.
Yes.
So yeah, all in good time. But one foot in front of the other, I think. Let's just finish off our Mysore venue, and then we can take it from there.
Oh, yes. Sounds very interesting, and all the best for your upcoming ventures, various other stores across India and, of course, across the world as well.
Thank you, Shweta.
Lovely. I mean, talking about, I mean, you did mention, that, because of the lockdown, the pandemic, and, things didn't go as you had planned. So my question here is, so how has the pandemic affected your business, both in a positive and negative way? So how has it been for you?
Oh, it's been brutal. It's been really difficult. There's no question.
Mm,
Also, we were going through a lot of sort of growth plans the financial year preceding the pandemic. So we were really caught
mm,
off guard. We were in a vulnerable place. I
right.
can't say anything positive has come out of it for us, to be quite honest. All I can say
Mm,
is that it just made us have to work harder and push more. Um,
mm,
that's really been it. The only positive I would say is that maybe luckily we didn't do too much expansion before it happened. And had we done so, we would have had,
mm,
far higher overheads and more staff, whatever. But I'd actually grown my team quite considerably 2 months before the lockdown hit. So I had to let all of them go, which is really
right.
sad. It's been
Mm,
tough. There's no question. I think any entrepreneur whose business, small business, not big multinational, whatever, but small businesses who've survived the pandemic and been able to put more value on their profit and loss and on their balance sheet, will come out of this as much better, sharper, more adaptable entrepreneurs. And I think, and I hope investors are watching, because I think this is one of the questions they have to ask when they're assessing companies to invest in. It is,
right.
what was your performance like during the pandemic? Look, a lot of businesses have closed, a lot of independents have closed,
Mm,
and some of them used also the pandemic as an opportunity. There are definitely a lot of businesses that were
yes.
struggling, and the pandemic was the opportunity. But the other thing that we have to recognize, especially in India, is that growth was slowing down 3 years prior. And the fact that this
Right.
year Bangladesh's growth has been higher than ours tells you something about the
Mm,
macros. And I think one of my biggest reflections are that, you know, ideally, and as an entrepreneur, you can work outside of any macro. But the reality is that the macroeconomics will influence how far and how fast you can go. And I think it's just sobered me up a lot as an entrepreneur is that, you do have to be a little bit cognizant of what's happening around you in the market,
mm,
and it's also industry specific. I see that okay, hospitality really suffered, but they were the fastest to bounce back. My trips to Bangalore in the last couple of months, Indranagar, for example, is trading beautifully. I mean, they're doing really, really
yeah.
good trade, and it's really good to see. And To be able to have
Mm.
to pay rents and salaries and be closed is very difficult. So that's amazing. But
Right.
in manufacturing, because the market and you as a producer are so separate, there's a lot more gaps to fill. Our strategy before the lockdown was mainly cafes and independent grocery stores, because we wanted to
Mm.
really work with independents. A lot of them have closed down, or are not sure whether to reopen or whatever. So we had to change our strategy and get into places like food hall, and go national that
Right.
way. So, and
Mm.
obviously we are online. One of the things, we were always online, but we were sort of 15% trade online, 85% offline. So that we've had to change a
Right.
bit. We've
Yes.
experimented with subscriptions or chocolate as a service for the techies out there.
Right.
SaaS, or software as a service, is quite a big term being thrown around. So
Right.
we've been playing with chocolate as a service. And then home baking. That's one of the positives. I would say that's
Mm.
probably the only positive that's come out for us, because home baking has
Right.
really come out as a big thing. A lot of people are getting involved with home baking. So there was a market and a niche there that we weren't really focusing on before, and we have started to work more for home bakers.
Mm.
And what we're hoping to do in the future is be able to bring our costs down so that we can compete with some of the global brands, but
Mm.
create something which costs the same, but is local, is ethical, and is far more nuanced and sophisticated than your big industrial players like Calibu, for example. So those are some of the things that we're doing. We also brought out our 61.8% range. Before the
Mm.
pandemic, we were doing only 72%. So we brought out almost dark, which is the same
Mm.
recipes but slightly sweeter, just to open our market share. We realized that we had to be able to sort of appeal to a slightly wider base without losing our core identity as a dark chocolate brand. So
Mm.
yeah, a lot of small tweaks and pivots. I mean, as an entrepreneur,
Yes.
you're driving the ship.
Right.
You're plotting the course and sailing, and you just have to be really agile as and when storms and winds come through. But I do think holding your nerve is really important, especially in times like this. I don't
Yes.
come from a family where there's a lot of sort of family backing and support. So I've really had to rely on my own ability as an entrepreneur, and hopefully we come out of this stronger and better. One can only hope and try and work hard.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I mean, so well said, David, and I'm so glad that yes, I mean, you have steered yourself and your venture, your company through the pandemic, and of course, you do have some plans to, just of course, as you said, pivots, riveting here and there, and making the changes with respect to the situations, and going forward ahead with it. So it's really amazing. And yes, of course, every entrepreneur, I think every day is a learning. And it's all about what we put to the table, at the end of the day, and what do we give to the customer, which is of value to them.
Yeah.
And of course, I think it's every day. Every day is an adventure.
Yeah,
So.
totally. Jesus.
Yes, amazing. All right. Yeah, so moving on. Yeah, I mean, of course, I know one other thing is you're also a podcaster. Velocity is the name of it. So I would want to know. I mean, of course, it's really exciting to talk to a fellow podcaster. But I would like to know if you could share as to what your podcast is about, and yeah, of course, we'd be happy to hear.
Sure.
And of course, the
Sure.
listeners
So
would, of course, listen to you as well.
sure.
Yeah.
Velocity is something that I started in the first
Mm-hmm.
lockdown and then picked up in the second one. I've taken a little
Right.
break, but hope to get back to it really soon. The crux of the podcast is really to build strong conversations around the business of art, food, and drink.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
That's my space. That's where I play. It gives me an opportunity to talk to people that I'm really curious to chat to,
Mm.
and learn from. And one of the things that I've noticed through the years is that your network is your net worth, and the better the
Yes.
quality of the people and the professionals that you surround yourself with, the better quality your
Mm.
ideas will be, the better quality your work will be, the way you think, etc.
Right.
So it's really a platform for myself and the listeners to just get exposure to very interesting people doing really interesting things in the space of art,
Yes.
food, and drink. Yeah, and that's it. We got a couple of episodes in, so I'm hoping to get kind of back to it and get a little bit more consistent in the weeks to come. I will. I will. I really enjoyed it. And it's just always nice to connect with people, and so nice that we live in an age where I can be in Mysore and I can talk to someone on the other side of the world or other part of the country. It's really great. So it's nice to just narrow the gap, and really just feel connected. I think both myself and the listeners to very interesting people doing great work, passionate work.
Wow, I so feel, same. I mean, the same emotions that you put out there. Yeah, I get you.
Yeah.
Lovely. All right. So David, I mean, I would like to know, considering the pandemic, well-being is of utmost importance, especially more so now.
Mm,
So I would
yeah.
like to know, what do you do apart from baking and chocolate making and looking out for your ventures? So what else do you do as a part of your well-being routine?
My well-being. Well, the funny thing is that I don't really consider my well-being routine outside of my work. I consider it very much an integral
Wow,
part of my work. Yeah, that's
amazing.
reality. So I
Right.
studied yoga, Ashtanga for 5 years. Maybe that
Hmm.
is a big part of the beginning of my Mysore journey. Although it's not really what brought me to Mysore. I think it was a little bit more
Right.
coincidental. But that was a really good foundation. South Africa, our culture is very much outdoors, same as all the other Southern Hemisphere countries, very physical culture. So
Right.
growing up playing rugby and hockey, water polo, was a big part of the way that we were raised, So for me, that connection between body and mind was established by the schooling system that we went to, and I still to this day think it's really important.
Mm.
I mean, my younger days, skateboarding was more sort of the way that I would stay fit, and I really love skateboarding. But that hasn't really been the case the last 10 years or so. So
Mm.
just I have a sort of an hour routine in the morning of physical exercise, and then I make sure that I get at least 20 minutes in the morning of meditation time. Uh,
Mm.
I haven't been so good lately, but on a good day, I'll to do that in the afternoon as well. Although actually, I say that at work, I tend to, sometimes instead of having a coffee break, I'll just close my eyes and meditate for 20 minutes. And my staff have gotten used to, seeing me do that. It's not an issue anymore. One felt a little bit awkward at the beginning, but they're kind of used to me, and even my managers have picked up the habit as well. Uh, and I think it's just
Right.
so important. Number one, to pull yourself emotionally out of tense situations. And I think in small business, especially, we can make things really personal, and we really shouldn't. At the end of the day,
Mm.
business should be just treated as a game. And for sure, as entrepreneurs, we take a lot of risk and we have a lot riding on it. But the reality is that the more centered you are, the better your relationship will be with your staff, your team members, your customers,
Right.
suppliers, and any kind of stakeholder. Number one. Number two, the quality. I talk about this again. The quality of your thinking and your decision making will be far higher. And I think about this all the time because you're making as a managing director or as a CEO or as a founder, you're making hundreds to thousands of decisions every day, and your job is
Mm.
to make very important, very high quality decisions. So you want to have as much going for you as possible.
Mm.
I've never been able to sort of work out in the evenings. I'd rather start my day. It's kind of like putting your train on a specific set of tracks or rails.
Right.
And I think and I've noticed that like the times, there was a couple of years early on that I was not so good at having a routine, and definitely, I would let the stress and the pressure get to me. So it's definitely helped play the long game. I talk a lot about playing Test cricket rather than 2020 cricket, playing the long game, and because I think that if you're going to be successful, it does take time. And I think we're spoiled when we see all of these stories of kids coming out of Y Combinator, and especially in tech, And for myself in the food business, it's not like that, or luxury, it's not like that. Luxury businesses are built over generations usually. So it takes time, and I think you have to be playing the long game. But besides that, yeah, swimming is something I do. I mean, pools are still closed. Public pools are still closed in Mysore. Mysore has
Yeah.
some fantastic swimming pools, really
Mm.
affordable. I'm really happy to see my tax money going to that infrastructure. So that's
Wow.
great. Swimming is something I really enjoy. But yeah, that's it really at the moment. I am unfortunately a little bit of the stereotypical entrepreneur. I'm very much work obsessed. I kind of don't know what to do when
Mm,
I'm not working, but it's okay. It's just a phase. It's a
wow.
phase. And then I think once the baby is strong enough and you move to the next chapter, then you look for more balance in your life. But the early days can be a little bit myopic, a little bit single focused. And I look at friends of
Right.
mine, for example, Matt, who owns Blue Tokai Coffee, who, when I first met him, he had just had his daughter. And he was married. And I was like,
Mm,
wow, how are you doing this? Like you're starting this company and you're starting a family, and they've grown,
right.
so much since then. That was when they had
Mm,
one cafe in South Delhi, and now 27
right.
stores nationwide. So it's possible apparently, but I had no idea. I have no idea how folks manage family time and business and everything else. Yeah, it's very hard, but
Right.
routine is very important, very very important.
Wow, amazing. I mean, so glad that you are doing a whole lot of things, to keep yourself going. And as you rightly mentioned, that you need to indulge in something which takes you off from your. As you said, you need to be calm. You need to be balanced, because you are
Yeah,
going to make very important decisions out there, and you need to be
yeah,
balanced. So
yeah.
rightly said. And yes, I mean, so glad that you are doing a lot of things and would also want to get into a lot of things. So yes. Lovely. So we come to the last section, which I call as the pruner spotlight section. So
Okay,
I'm going to ask you 5 questions.
okay,
So it could be on the personal or the professional front, and
sure.
you could answer to me in a word or two or a couple of sentences. I leave that totally up to you.
Okay,
All right.
okay.
Okay, so here goes the first question. What is your ikigai? So ikigai is nothing but the reason for your being. So what is that one thing that you would do on any given day, no matter what is happening around the world? So what is that one
It
thing?
for me, it's creativity and people. Like that is my reason for being. It's those two things. Love
Lovely.
people, and I live for creativity.
Amazing. Well said. Okay. Any person who inspires you, or any book which has inspired you. You can talk of both or any.
So many, so many. I can't even start. I cannot even start. So many.
But any one, like, a major presence in your life that you.
I'll give you a quick anecdote.
Sure.
Before I came to India, I made a quick trip to Marrakesh in Morocco for inspiration. And
Mm,
it was a really difficult trip, and some things went right, some things went wrong, whatever. But it was just before I was moving back to London to start my bakery. I had been in the English countryside, whatever, whatever. I've
right.
always loved the Maghreb and Arabesque culture,
Mm,
and sort of the southern Mediterranean. So went to Marrakesh, whatever, and accidentally ended up at the house of Yves Saint Laurent, and it is now a heritage building called La
mm,
Jardin de Majorelle,
okay.
and it's a cubist 1930s piece of architecture that was invented
Mm,
that was built by another Frenchman. Yves and his partner restored the whole place. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And I ended up in the office of Yves Saint Laurent. And I saw a picture of Yves, black and white, at his desk. And I was just like, wow, this guy is super, super successful. I mean, externally, I don't know about his personal life, but he was externally very
mm.
successful, world renowned, and was creatively free. And I
Ah.
said to myself in that moment, I said, this for me is the gold standard of success. It's not just financial success, it's creative success as well. And to be able to live a sort of very authentic version of yourself, and to pursue
Right.
sort of a very authentic path for yourself. And it was just summed up in that moment. And I think that's lived with me ever since.
Mm. Wow. I mean, interesting story out there. Wow.
Pleasure.
Lovely. Right. My third question is, hypothetically, if you turn out to
Mhm.
be the richest person in the world tomorrow, what would you
Mm.
like to do? Or would you continue to do what you're already doing?
I would add to what I'm doing. I wouldn't
Mm,
necessarily stop. I would definitely put into play a lot of the things that we want to do with the company much
right.
quicker, and bring
Yeah.
some, really high quality talent on board. But then I've been really getting into restoration architecture. So both my home as well as the new Naviluna headquarters are both restoration projects. And I just love to see old buildings coming back to life. So that's something that I'd definitely be pursuing a lot more. Um, but yes, I don't know. I don't know. I had a small stint as a musician, music is
Ah,
definitely something that's calling me. So it'd be really nice to get back to music and just have the time to do that. So
wow.
yeah, I mean, I think that and a lot more traveling and learning. One of the things I've missed, kind of, having to hold the business together is just being able to, let everything go for a couple of months and go travel and learn from whether it's farmers or craftspeople or whatever, and work with them for a couple of months. That's something I'd like to do a lot more of.
Wow, amazing. All right. My next question is there any I mean, as you said, I mean, it's related to traveling as well. So is there uh ingredients from across the world that you would want to infuse into Naviluna, or do you want to just keep it as, as you said, local, right?
Yeah, local for sure. No, I'm not interested in all that. No,
Okay.
because I think that products should reflect where they come from. When we
Right.
look at French fashion, it reflects the culture of
Yeah,
France, and there is a
exactly.
market for that. So when you're
Yes.
looking at a Mysore luxury chocolate, it should reflect South India, and I
Right.
don't see why you would want to change that. And the reality is, like, when we've gone to the UK, we've done exhibitions there. People
Mhm.
love it. They love the story. They love the flavors.
Ah,
They love the packaging. They love the aesthetic, because they
wow.
don't want to see. Of course, they love their own things, but
Right.
it's nice to get something that's different and it's a bit exotic.
Right. Is there any ingredient that you want to like try it out in the near future? Ingredient or
No,
flavor?
no. I would like to work more with cocoa farmers to
Oh, wow.
improve the cacao that we have here in South India.
Ah,
That's more
wow.
where I'm heading. And there's
Lovely.
a lot of cool things that we can do to make it better. One of the things I would like to do is start, no, I shouldn't say too much. We've done some barrel aging of
Ah,
cocoa in whiskey barrels. And I would just
oh,
say that that's an area I'd like to explore more. Let's put it that way.
what?
It's
All
an area I'd
right.
like to. But I would like to drink more champagne. I think I need more champagne in my life. With too many ingredients. That's just a personal thing. That'd be great.
Right. Lovely. All right. I know you did speak a bit about success in the previous question, but let me get straight to it. So, what is your definition of success?
Mm, your own time. That means you are where you want to be, doing what you want to do when you want to. That
Mm,
really is my definition of success.
well said.
Master of
Well
your
said.
own time. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Lovely. All right. So coming to the last question, so what is one key takeaway that you want to give the audience? It could be any tips, insights, or learnings from your journey. And the audience here are people who want to start the entrepreneurial journey, or for the people who are already on the journey and want to scale it to the next level. So, what would you like to tell them?
Oh my goodness. I think there's a couple of things. The first thing I would say is you do have to be authentic to yourself. And if something really resonates with you, irrespective of what others might say or not,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a worthy pursuit. And I think you have to also be careful about what you share when ideas are too early, because you might not be solid within yourself about that idea.
Mm-hmm.
And other people might dissuade you when idea is early. But I think you do have to be really authentic and work on things that mean something to you, because the journey is hard and it's only passion that's going to keep you going. And there's another school of thought today that says that passion is not important, you need to work smart. I don't understand how you're going to work 12 to 18 hours a day on something that you're not passionate about.
Right.
I love money, but I'm certainly not passionate about money. Status is something that I'm really not bothered about. I don't look for approval from other people. I live for the moment where I see an idea come together and it's come together beautifully. And that really touches me, and it means so much to me. So those are my driving factors. That's what keeps me going. And I think, yes, authenticity is really important. I'm so tired of looking at Excel spreadsheets, presentations, or highfalutin conversations, which are just based on people trying to make things, but using their mind and their intellect too much, and not really sort of being intuitive about it. Yeah, it's just sad, to see that. And I see a lot of capital following these ideas, and
Mm,
I think it's a really inefficient use of capital. I think entrepreneurs need to be really, really passionate, and make sure that the journey is meaningful inside. Not
right.
just in terms of metrics and optics. Yeah,
Amazing. Yeah, be authentic. Yeah, and be passionate. Yes,
and be
lovely.
passionate. Absolutely.
Lovely. Thanks for that insight, David. And how can anyone reach out to you?
Oh, I'm a bit tricky to find, but you can always shoot me an email
Mhm.
at david@naviluna.in.
Right.
Unfortunately, I lead very, very busy days. The best way to find me is to invite me out for a drink. That'll probably find out where
Wow.
I'm going to be. And I'm really a bit of a technophobe in that sense. I really don't answer calls and all of that. I like to be really focused Monday to Friday
Absolutely.
on work. So yeah, I'm one of those people that if you see me in person, then I'm always happy to have a chat and learn more about you and what you're doing. That's the best way for sure. But yeah, otherwise, I mean, folks can always email me.
Amazing. I will surely leave your email ID in the episode description.
Sure.
And David, thank you so much. I just had a
My
lovely
pleasure.
conversation with you. And it's
My
been
pleasure.
such an honor to connect with you and also to learn about your journey. And it's more so inspiring for someone who is not from the same country, but, has come from somewhere else, but, wants to get the local flavors, the ingredients out there through
Quite literally,
chocolates.
yes.
I mean, that's so beautiful and inspiring. So, thank you for being a part of my show. It was such an
My
amazing
pleasure,
conversation that I
Shweta.
had with you. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Lovely.
Thank you
Thank you
very
so
much for
much.
having me. And yeah, all the best with the pod. I hope it grows nicely. And yes, thank you to the listeners as well for their time.
Thank you so much.